All right, we're going to get started this afternoon. I want to welcome you all back. We're going to do our last treasurer's training of January. We're going to talk about the Supplemental Annual Financial Report. We've been getting lots of questions on this. I know this is an eager topic for everybody to hear and listen to so that we can move forward with filing the annual financial report by the end of February. So just as a quick reminder, right now if you have a camera or a microphone, those are either muted and the camera is turned off. That just helps with our bandwidth as we record these and put them out. At the end of this, we will give you back control of your cameras and your microphones so that you may ask questions, and we'll try to answer them as we go along. We just ask that you don't talk over each other during that time. It just makes it very difficult to hear. We are recording this session, so it will go up on our website along with all the other sessions that we have put together so far. I also have just finished up the February schedule of sessions, so we are planning on sending that out this afternoon. So should hit your inboxes this afternoon. We'll also try and get that up on our website within the next day or two, so if you lose it there, you can go to the website and find it. Again, it has separated by the affiliate groups, so you just need to look for treasurers, see which training is offered in February, and the event link is right there with it, with the date and the time. February is not like January, so there's not going to be a ton. In fact, I think for the treasurers, I don't have it up, but I think we only have one training in February for you guys, and then you guys will roll over into your regular treasurer trainings from here on forward. So with that, I think I've covered everything. So I'm going to turn it over to Lori, and she is going to talk to you guys about the Supplemental Annual Financial Report.
Is it the right way, or do I need to flip it?
You just swap it.
I sure don't know what I do, guys. Move my boxes
Perfect.
out of the way.
I don't see any boxes.
Well, it's just you and me, but I assumed they were in the way, so I moved them out of the way.
Okay.
Okay, so today's topic, the session we're talking today is on the Supplemental Annual Financial Report. What we're going to go over what this report is, why it's important, why we need it, and how you complete it if you are a treasurer, which is going to be different than the way anyone else completes it. So this is heads up on that. There we go. Okay, the Annual Financial Report, or AFR, is something your auditor is working very busily on right now, we hope. Statute requires for each county that they complete an annual financial report within 60 days after the end date of the calendar year. For years that are not leap years, that's March 1st. If it's a leap year, it's going to be February 29th. The report is completed on the Gateway website. We did an overview of Gateway in December. Ricky showed you where you could find annual financial reports, so you can go back and look at that for your county or any other unit that you're interested in. The annual financial report contains the financial information for the county. So the county auditor does have the responsibility to prepare and enter the information on Gateway for the AFR. And the AFR then becomes the basis of the financial information that we audit each year. After we complete the audit, we provide an opinion on the financial information reported to us as to whether it is materially correct or not. An independent audit opinion that your financial statement as presented is materially correct is very important. If your county is looking to obtain financing, this opinion factors into the decision to issue the financing, and the rating on the county determines the cost of that financing, and your audit opinion affects that rating. It also affects your county's reputation with your citizens, with other readers of the financial statements, other regulatory agencies, your state legislators, and representatives. If the financial statements are not materially correct, or we are not able to place an opinion on the financial statements due to the condition of financial records or the lack of records, this has a strong negative impact on your county. So the AFR is a very important document. We cannot emphasize that enough. It is not just a task that has to be done. It's very important information that needs to be provided. As treasurers, you are very important in the audit of the annual financial report, as we use your reconcilements to determine if the county funds that are reported in the AFR do in fact reconcile with the funds ledger. So it can become an audit finding if you do not reconcile with the auditor's fund ledger each month. We talked about that in the working together session. Even if the cash book reconciles to the bank, if the funds ledgers on the cash book don't reconcile to the auditor's funds ledger, the county is not reconciled. So it's very important that all of those parts move together. The reconcilement is a very important part of showing that the county's annual financial report is fairly presented. I mean, it's materially correct, and you play a pivotal role in that process. So the auditor, we talked about this in, again, working together, the auditor maintains the funds ledger as the official financial record for the county. As treasurer, you also maintain a funds ledger separate from the auditor's funds ledger, and the reconcilement of those two funds ledgers work as a check and balance that all records have been posted completely and accurately. The general fund is the main operating fund of the county. There are also numerous special revenue funds at the county level to account for specific sources of revenues or specific purposes for those revenues. For example, there are highway funds, public safety funds, health funds, cumulative funds, perpetuation funds, and the list goes on. You're probably already familiar with, again, you have your own separate funds ledger, and it's going to have all of those funds listed on that. You can find a listing of all of the statutory funds, and these are the funds established by a specific statute in our uniform chart of accounts. We keep this chart on the county auditor's webpage. It's a handy tool to have. So if you have any questions about finding it, let us know, but it does list in the fund descriptions for all the statutory funds, not only a fund number, but what statute those funds come from. We encourage you to look at the chart of accounts. In addition to those statutory funds, there are also local funds that are unique to your county. There are settlement funds that are used during settlement when your property tax and excise tax are moved by quietus from the cash book, where you've been holding them throughout the collection process, to these settlement funds so the taxes can be distributed to the appropriate taxing units. You do not disperse from the cash book. It has to be moved into a county fund to be dispersed, and the settlement funds handle that transaction during settlement. There are also remittance funds that hold collections until those funds are remitted to the state or remitted out to local taxing units. Then there are grant funds as well. So the funds ledger is a complicated document. And again, you're already somewhat familiar with it because you are keeping your own funds ledger. However, even with all of that complication, there are additional funds that are not part of the funds ledger. The money your office has collected after settlement that is posted on your cash book is an example of money that is not on the funds ledger. In addition, the clerk has a trust fund that is held outside of the county treasury. The sheriff has a commissary fund and an inmate trust fund that is held outside of the treasury. Other departments may also hold funds outside of the treasury, such as the Tourism Commission or county home resident accounts. These are just examples of other funds that are held outside of the county treasury. In order for there to be a complete accounting of all funds held at the county, these additional funds need to be added to the funds ledger information in the AFR. The annual financial report is not complete without all of these funds. The auditor will usually upload their funds ledger information from the financial software onto the AFR on the Gateway website. It's not something you have to worry about. Again, that's something the auditor does. This information will include the beginning balance, receipts and disbursements for the year, and the ending balance for each individual fund. The auditor will then have to manually add the supplemental funds. Again, those are the funds that are not carried on the funds ledger that we just discussed. The funds will also, these additional supplemental funds will also need to show a beginning balance, receipt, disbursements for the year, and the ending balance. To get that information, the auditor relies on the supplemental annual financial report that's completed by each office or department that has these outside funds. It is the responsibility of the officer certifying this information on the supplemental AFR to ensure that this information is accurate and complete. If you submit a supplemental AFR that is not materially correct, you could have an audit finding. So it's very important that you know what you need to be putting on these forms and that you complete them accurately. The auditor has some responsibility to review the forms from all of the departments and to look them over for completeness, to make sure they're certified and that they're reasonable, that the data is reasonable. But the auditor does not have your source document. They don't have the data that you're using to complete that. So they can't verify the information is accurate. Okay? So that responsibility is placed on the officer completing the form. To illustrate, suppose a department turns in a supplemental form that lists the ending balance as $1 million, when in past 3 years, the fund's ending balance has been $100,000. The auditor could see that that information does not seem reasonable based on the history of the fund, and they may inquire back to the office department as to why the balance increased so significantly. However, if that officer says, nope, that's the correct amount, and the audit shows it is not the correct amount, the finding is on the office or department, not the auditor. The office or department that completed the supplemental AFR, not the auditor, because they're the ones certifying that that amount was correct. And I say this not to cause you personal stress, but rather to stress the importance of providing accurate information. You should keep a file with the supporting documentation for the numbers you use to complete the report. We will audit the supplemental AFR when we are auditing the numbers on the AFR and as a total, and we will need to trace those numbers back to the source documents. For your office, that's going to be the cash book for the last day worked in December and the prior report in your December bank statement. We do have a template of the supplemental AFR, and I've listed the location on this slide. If we have time at the end, I'll pull up the web page and show you exactly where that link is located. But if you go to our website, and I put the address up here, www.in.gov/SBOA, and navigate to the counties page under political subdivision, and then scroll down to the section on that page called Gateway. If you expand the menu under that and look for annual financial report, and then go down to the links underneath the annual financial report, you will find a link for supplemental annual report. And when you click on that link, it will bring up, it will download to your computer an Excel version of this template. So this is an example of what gets downloaded. It was a screenshot of what gets downloaded. You actually have this again in Excel, so it's fillable. You complete this form, you'll save it onto your computer. You can print it out. So we'll go over the different parts of this form in more detail, but this is what you're filling out. It's just this one-page document here. Underneath the link to the template, you will find a link to open a Word document with instructions on completing the form. I've copied some of those instructions on the slides. I'm going to go over them with you, but I just want you to be aware that you can always find them again on our website if you ever want to go back and look at them. The first section is the contact information. So this is the county and the appropriate office. So as we said, every department that has outside funds has to fill out one of these reports. They all look exactly the same coming in. So it needs to say treasurer on it or sheriff on it or clerk or whoever's filling it out so the auditor knows what fund is involved. If someone else in your office is completing the form, be sure their information is listed in the contact information. Again, the auditor's office might have questions on the form and come back to that person to make inquiries. And we audit the form. And so we're going to go back to the person probably that put the information together if we have questions on where the numbers came from. The next section is to identify the fund. For the treasurer, there is one fund, which is your property taxes and other sources collected since settlement that you are holding on to at the last business day of the month. And I'm going to go over this, so don't panic yet. We are calling this the after settlement collections, but I have seen a lot of other names such as treasurer collections or just treasurer. As long as the fund is adequately identified, we're not going to quibble over the name. remember when we discussed reconcilement and the cash book in a previous session, we discussed that during settlement, you will certify to the county treasurer what your total collections are as of a specific date, and that amount will be receipted by Quietus into the settlement funds for distribution. That removes them from the first two sections of the cash book and moves them down to the funds ledger when you remove them by Quietus to those settlement funds. However, you continue to collect taxes after that date and until the end of the year and beyond. Those are the collections that we need that will be included in your June settlement, and the amount that you have collected since that settlement date that you certified, and the amount that you're holding at the end of December is what needs to be reported on the AFR. There is a section on the AFR for investments. You do not need to show investments on the supplemental AFR unless you have a separate investment for the property taxes. You might have to work with the auditor if you have specific funds that are invested, but if you have made investments from all funds, these do not have to be separately identified. You're just going to show them as cash. For most of the departments or offices that complete a supplemental AFR, they're going to post the beginning balance, the total receipts, disbursements for the year, and the ending balance of their funds. So I'm talking here like the clerk's trust or the sheriff's commissary. However, the treasurer's report is different. And once you get the concept that we are explaining, and I'm going to go over it a couple times, you will find that yours is one of the easiest supplemental forms to complete once you get the concept. For the beginning balance, what you need is the ending balance from the prior report. And that's the same for all supplemental reports. For disbursements, however, you will show the beginning balance again in the disbursement section. So you're posting it twice. Once as beginning balance, once as disbursements. What this does, in effect, is it reverses the beginning balance from the report. It backs it out. So the beginning balance minus disbursements equals 0. For receipts, you need the cash book for the last business day of your year. You will add the total property taxes collected and the total other sources collected, add those two sections together. The total of these two sections is posted to your receipts column on the report. This number then becomes the ending balance as your disbursements netted out the beginning balance, and only that receipt number remains. And that receipt number is your total collections, not yet settled, as of the last day of the month. See, easy peasy. We will go over an example on this. Okay. Once the form is completed, you do need to certify it, and we'll go over a process for approving it and certifying it. So here's an example. Again, it's a screenshot. I made up all these numbers. You don't get to make up the numbers. It's not that easy. However, here we are in Pleasant County again, and this is for the treasurer. So we've named our county. We've put the office as the treasurer, and the year is 2020. Okay. So Ricky didn't feel like filling this out, so she had her deputy fill it out. Phil here. Phil completed this form. So we put Phil's name, his phone number, and his email address. So if there are any questions from the auditor, they can call Phil and find out what's going on with this. We've identified the supplemental fund as after settlement collections. Again, we're not going to quibble on the name, but that's really truly what it is. That's the most descriptive. We're showing no investments. The beginning cash balance comes from the prior report, and I'll show you how you can find that. We put that in the beginning balance as well as the disbursements column. So you see in beginning balance cash, we have $3,095,272, and we put that exact same number in other disbursements, $3,095,272. Okay. If we did not have the receipt number in here, our ending cash balance would be 0. Those two numbers cancel each other out. I do want to point out here, because it can be kind of confusing, where it says other receipts and other disbursements. This is to help your auditor when they're filling out the AFR, because they have a classification for receipts and disbursements, and these supplemental funds are just come under other. So that's why it's labeled this on this report. So don't worry about that. Okay. Now the receipts, those come from the cash book as of the last day of the month and year. The ending balance, again, is beginning balance plus receipts minus disbursements. Disbursements reverse out that beginning balance, which takes it back to zero. So the only number remaining is the cash book number from the last day of the year. So our other receipts, I'll show you where those numbers come from. $4,195,585. Again, this is a made-up number. Means that our ending cash balance is $4,195,585. What we are saying in our financial report is that at the end of December, the last day of the month of 2020, we were holding $4,195,585 in property taxes and other sources of tax collections that had not been settled. They're just on the cash book as of that date. So how do you find the beginning balance from last year's report? If you are lucky, your predecessor will have a file for the supplemental AFR that shows how the form was completed for 2019, and you can get your ending numbers from that. You may not be that lucky. You can look at the cash book from the last day of the year, 2019. Add your property taxes and other taxes section together as of that date, and that should be the number that was used in the prior year's report. I looked at several AFRs for 2019 to get an example for this session, and I realized that there are quite a few counties that are not reporting after settlement collections properly, so you may be seeing more training on this in the near future. So we'll talk in a minute about what to do if the prior report does not have the correct number. The ones that I noted that were incorrect appeared mainly to be using actual amounts settled in receipts and disbursements, so I'm hoping that in most cases, the beginning and ending balances were actually correct. So here's a screenshot from an annual financial report. I just pulled one. I went down till I found one that had done it correctly. It shows, it calls it County Treasurer Cash Account. It's after settlement collections, but it's enough to let us know that this is what it's talking about. It has the beginning cash balance, that exact same number under disbursements. It has receipts that then become that ending cash balance, and that blue arrow is pointing to it. So what it's telling us is that on the end of at December 31st, 2019, there were $3,095,272.66 available that had been collected in property taxes and other sources that the county was holding. The county treasurer had posted to the cash book. Again, to get that receipt number, you're going to add the total property tax collections and total from the other section of collections together to come up to the first two sections on the left side of your cash book. And this is the number you will post to receipts. It becomes your ending number. Okay. To try and explain the accounting theory, if this is interesting to you, if not, just plug your ears for a second. Take the commissary fund of the sheriff. Those funds are always held by the sheriff. They are not paid into the treasury. Each year, the sheriff's bookkeeper tracks the collections from the commissary payments, makes all disbursements from that fund to purchase commissary items and other supplemental costs of the jail and department. For clerks, part of their trust account at the end of December does hold fees that will be paid into county, but that amount is not material when compared to the trust as a total. We don't require to separate that out. The trust items themselves are held until they're refunded to the payer or remitted to the proper payee. For property tax and other sources that are accounted for in the cash book, twice a year, the entire amount collected as of a certain date, the date that you certify for settlement to your auditor, is moved into the county funds for distribution. The treasurer does not pay anything out directly from the cash book. If we included those settlement sweeps into those settlement funds in the AFR, we would actually count them twice, as they were already accounted for in the settlement funds on the funds ledger. We don't want to do that. For that reason, we only want to pick up the amount that has been held in the cash book at year end that has not been settled. And that's why these are treated a little bit differently than, say, a sheriff's commissary or the clerk's trust money. Here is a screenshot of the made-up cash book we used in our reconciling. Again, these numbers are completely made up, but I wanted to show you what I'm talking about. I can't get the whole thing on the page, but the big blue, straight blue arrow points to the balance of taxes to be settled. So this is the amount that you this amount at December 31st or whatever your last business day is the amount that you have collected and have not settled yet. Okay. Then you go down to the next section, other sources, and you have a total for other sources. To get your receipts, you add your total, your balance of taxes to be settled and your total other sources together. So if this were, and I think this is a March page, but if this were the last day of the year, we would add the $1,124,583 that's by this blue, straight blue arrow to the $1,745,456 that's by this curved blue arrow to get a total, which is $2,870,042.08. That's the number that you put as your receipt. Those two numbers added together. Once the report is completed, it needs to be reviewed by a second person. This should be part of your internal controls. That person is reviewing for accuracy and completeness. In our example, if Phil completed the report for Pleasant County, Ricky then, as the treasurer, needs to review it, approve it, and actually certify the report. If Ricky had completed the report, she might have Phil or another deputy actually review it just to check it for accuracy and completeness back to the cash book, make sure she hadn't overlooked something. During the review process, you're actually tracing the beginning balance to the prior year's report or prior year's cash book ending day. Make sure that the disbursement equals the beginning balance exactly. Sometimes you can type in numbers when you're on that Excel sheet and make a mistake. Trace the ending balance to the cash book for the last day of the month, the most recent calendar year. Make sure the cash book balances, that your cash book balance is left to right, and that it reconciles for the month, so that number is accurate. Document your review, so you need a signature, initials, depending on who's doing the review. Keep a record of the review for the audit. You don't need to turn the review over to the auditor, but keep a record either on that form or in some other way to show that it was reviewed, and then send a copy to your auditor. And that will be whatever your county chooses. You may email it to them, you may send them a hard copy, whatever your county decides is the best way to do that. So what do you do if the ending balance from the prior report is not correct? This can happen. Do you want to complete your supplemental AFR for 2020 with the correct, accurate information, even if it doesn't tie to the prior year? But keep your source documents to support the numbers you are using. You also, if your audit report for 2019 has been completed and the audit report has been issued, you can always check that report. Not all of them have been issued yet, but if it has been, you can check that report. It's possible that when we audited, we had proposed changes to the AFR. You should have been told about that, but sometimes the communication breaks down. So that's another place you can look to see if they made changes specifically to that beginning balance that you weren't aware of. But in any case, go with the correct number. If you are not reconciled, at least make sure that your property tax collections are supported by your tax and billing software, and that your other sources are supported by your receipts to those sources, like your excise tax receipts or your billing software if you have your sewer liens and other information that supports the number. So that as much as possible, you are giving the most accurate number that you can. If you have questions, if you are not sure, if you have issues, don't hesitate to reach out to Ricky or I with your questions, and we'll advise you as much as we can on this. We had a question come in a couple days ago or yesterday, and sometimes we get it from county auditors. We have no authority to extend the deadline. The deadline is what it is. 60 days after the end of the month, of the end of the year, the AFR has to be posted. If they do not have all of the supplemental funds, they are probably going to post it without them. But the audit finding would be they'll be able to document they asked for it, then the audit finding is going to be with the office that did not provide that information. There is no way to just keep putting it off. We can't start auditing until we have that information. We have to have that information as soon as possible. Okay, so before we go into questions, let me stop sharing. And I will.
Well, while I do this and give them back control of their cameras and their microphones, we did have one question. Okay. Did you want to know, would we track change fund out?
Your cash change fund is probably not material. So, but yes, if you have it, then include it on there. It won't change from year to year, but it's probably not material. But if it's part of your report, keep it on there.
Okay. So control of your microphone, your cameras, if you have any now the time to ask. You explained it so well.
They're just that, or they're all in shock.
We have to do.
It really, I know I'm not being facetious. It really is the easiest one to fill out because it is just back out last year's and put in the correct amount as of the last day of the year.
I can't get my allow me to see if something got missed. Is this form also called the car report?
Yes, it is. Back before Gateway, I must have done it with clerks, but not you. Back before Gateway came about, every unit filled out a separate annual report. So we had CAR with county annual report, CTAR was the city town annual report, libraries had an annual report, but with Gateway there is one template that everybody fills out, and it went to annual financial report. So if it's called the CAR, you know what they're talking about. It's the same thing as the supplemental AFR. What was the other question? Oh, if you cannot reconcile, again, you have to get the best numbers that you can get, not knowing where you're off on that. Again, trace your property tax numbers to your tax and billing software to make sure they're supported, the amount that you have collected since settlement. Look at your other sources, make sure they trace the source documents. That's the number you need on the annual financial report. Even if you're not reconciled, you still need to get reconciled because that's very, very important. But give the most accurate information that you have.
A more abstract report, question mark, but I'm not really sure what that's in reference to. So, Elaine, if you could maybe give us a little bit more on that one. And then if it doesn't balance, how do I have good December 31st numbers?
If the cash book doesn't balance, I'm not sure I understand the question. If you don't, the cash book, you've got three parts that you're reconciling to. You've got the first section is your property tax collections. The second section are your other sources like excise tax and sewer liens that you've collected, and there's a whole list of them in there. The third section is your funds ledger that you are reconciling with the auditor. There can be problems in any one of those sections, but if you have a problem, like if you're not reconciling your funds ledger correctly, and that's why you can't reconcile to the bank, you can still get those first two section numbers and complete the supplemental AFR. If those first two sections aren't correct, you have control over that. Go back to your source documents because you posted those sections. You have control over what's on those. Whereas with the reconciling with the auditor, you're going to have to work, the two offices have to work together to come up with that funds ledger amount.
Okay, just a few minutes to go back down to Jenny. She says they're off by 1.1 million. Sorry, it moved. But both Lau and her believe it's partially BMV. So they're trying to figure that part out.
So excise can be a problem.
Yep. Okay, do we just give this form to the auditor's office or do we upload it in Gateway?
It only goes to the auditor. You do not need to upload it. You need to keep a copy for yourself, so you have a copy of what you've supplied, and have that available for audit with your whatever supporting documents you have with it, but it does not go on Gateway.
She's saying, okay, so Elaine says, could it also be called an abstract report?
No. Your abstract report is much, much different and much, much more complicated than the AFR. And that's a summary of your assessed values rolled into, and it's actually now done by, I think, at parcel level, and then by taxing district, and that's how the basis of how we determine how much the LGF determines how much your tax rate can be. So the abstract is a much more complicated document.
Okay. What if the bank reconciliation has not balanced for a year prior to me becoming treasurer? Go with what we have. Lau's going to go next week, or is going to go week by week until we get to balance. Could take at least 2 weeks, if not longer.
Again, as far as the section 1 and 2, those are your source documents. So those should be from the date you certify, or your predecessor treasurer certified. That money got, the property taxes that were certified got moved out. So it's the remaining collections. That should trace to your tax and billing software. Your second section should trace again. If it's excise tax, you got a problem, but you should have deposit reports from BMD that total the total amount that was deposited in your account. So you should be able to pull the excise out of that, and that you should be able to come up with those numbers.
Okay, we got another one which is kind of similar. So when a new staff comes in and finds multiple issues from a previous staff and are not reconciled, how do the numbers posted complete the report?
Again, the number that we want is the most accurate number you can come up with for the amount of property taxes you have collected to be settled at the last day of the month of 2020, and the other sources, which does include your excise tax that you have collected that were not settled, did not have been pulled off the cash books. They should go back to your source documents.
Anybody else? Thank you, thank you. We've got, let's see, quite a few people tune in today.
It's good.
I know. She said, okay, so I think you did a great job explaining this, Lori. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if this is not making sense, or you think about it a little while longer, give us a call. We'd be glad to go over it again.
Absolutely. Lots of thank yous coming in, so that's nice. Who logs our training hours? That was, okay, so you are responsible for keeping track of your own training hours. What we do, so anything that's a state called, meeting, so for example, this one, anyone who has logged in here, once you logged in, I now have a log that you attended. So at the end of February, we will be sending out a certification for the ones that you logged into, okay? That will tell you how many hours of that we're certifying you attended this, and this is how much CPD that you get from that, okay? If you are unable to attend and, to log in here and you need to go back and watch one, you just need to keep a log that you watched it. I can't certify you watched it because I have no log of you doing it. Okay, so you just keep a record and then you maintain your own training records.
You can also check with your association. The treasurers might keep something. You have to work with them how that works. But sometimes they do ask us for who's attended, so they may be tracking it as well.
Yeah, but these sessions have been very helpful. Thank you for putting them together. You're very welcome. I hope everybody stayed safe today too. Where we live, it was freezing rain. Our roads were frozen. We all lost power last night. Just a crazy weather night. Okay. Well, if you guys don't have anything else, we can let you go for the afternoon. We do appreciate you tuning in. We hope we're able to answer some questions, give you some guidance on at least where to start. And again, as Lori said, if you get to it and you have any questions, reach out. We'll try to help you the best we can. Okay. Well, have a wonderful afternoon and stay warm.
Bye. Thank you.